So, hello guys. So, we will be discussing another lesson that is all about culture. So, how culture is so important in this international business. So, as you remember, that in organization, it cannot be um, it cannot operate without its people, so without its human resource. So the greatest investment of a company is indeed their human resource, not just their product, not just their service. Without their human resources, they cannot sell, they cannot produce products for their consumers. So let's proceed in discussing the culture and different international businesses. So I'll be sharing my screen. So lesson two is all about business culture and and environment. So here, let's discuss first the learning outcomes. So we will be learning about different methods used in different business cultural environments. Know the major causes of cultural differences and change. Recognize the behavioral factors influencing countries' um, business practices, analyze guidelines for cultural adjustments, appreciate the diverse ways that national cultures may evolve. So first, let us discuss what is culture. So culture is norm or on the values, attitudes, and beliefs of the group of people. Business involves people. So as you can see, as I discussed, that people is the most important resource of a company. So every business employs, sell to, buys from, and it is owned and regulated by people. International business, of course, involves people from different national cultures, which affects every business's function, like managing the workforce or HR, marketing department, logistics or transportation output, purchasing or merchandising department, dealing with regulators or legal, and securing funds or finance department. So all of this involves people. So each culture has its own distinct in terms of characteristic. So, amo na siya ang pinaka-importante gid nga part sang business, especially kung international siya. Kay tungod nga iba-iba ang norms, iba-iba ang attitudes of each culture. So, about naman culture in a company. So a company may gain by nurturing a cultural diversity, especially if uh eh, they have international operation to foster. As different nationalities come together through projects and teams, uh, their diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences often enable business to gain a deeper knowledge of products and service and how to create and deliver them. So usually, in my experience, we are in a um global company. So before I have discussed that I was employed by Zalora. So si Zalora under na siya sa ginatawag na Global Fashion Group. So dire kung makita ta, we are in a global setup. So usually each continent may ara na siya, though branch si Global Fashion Group. So for example, sa Southeast Asia, si Zalora, dayon um, sa Australia and New Zealand, may ginatawag naman si The Iconic, may ara naman Zalando, para naman sa um, Brazil na part, no? And then in other branches pa. So here, each sub company may ara na sa ginatawag na common na region nga gina-foster para at least medyo lapit-lapit ang culture, lapit-lapit ang understanding sang each sub sub-branch. So here makita ta even though diverse ang culture pero medyo lapit-lapit ang culture nila. So that's why they can still foster a unified campaign, a unified project wherein it is involved by different nationalities. So that's why in our company, it really worked, making a uh, regional meaning do may isa ka center sang isa ka region ang gaman all across to the countries belong to that specific region. So at least medyo may ara sila ya paghugutan nga uh, similarities. So in terms of culture and experiences. Yan. So here, the outcome of diverse culture in a company. So some nationalities competed with other team members while others cooperated. Some awaited precise directions while others took self-initiative. So some expected to divide excuse while others sought a team solution to each task. So language differences inhibit a common understanding to common rules, priorities, and sentiment. So here, as you can see, may ara gid diya mga culture nga medyo palaban, medyo bida-bida. So it's given for them because it's their upbringing. So we need to deal with it, especially if you're in a diverse culture of a company. For example, us, may ara regional offices be from Malaysia, from Singapore, and then Indonesia. So, um, may ara times nga si Malaysia medyo gusto nila sila permi una, permi sila ang malid. Pero pabibo man si Philippines. So, wala na siya gapaperde. So, may ara na sa mga daw undertone competition, especially if it is involved specific nationalities. So, um, uh, in the future if your company will be multinational, so dwell with that, accept that there are really some nationalities that will be very competitive, very forward gidya in terms of competition, and making sure that uh, they they get the recognition. So also this language differences, especially for example, the English in Singapore is different in terms of tonations. So may mga words nga na medyo budlay pa intindihon. So you just need to process it first, and then medyo may you need to also understand and somehow learn how they speak a specific word or a specific phrases para at least medyo ma-minimize ang barrier in terms of language. Yan. So next, let's discuss about cultural collision. So as I mentioned a while ago, that hindi gid siya malikawan ang pagka collide sa different culture, especially if a specific culture is more competitive than the other. So there are some conditions that this collision arises. So number one, when a company implements practices that are less effective than intended. And secondly, when companies employ encounter distress because of difficulty in accepting or adjusting behavior of foreigners. So that is very true because for example, my regional head in Southeast Asia, and then ang gusto ipa-implement na practices sa region sang regional office would be somehow based on, for example, sa Singapore ang ang head office sang region. So the one that implements, or the one gahimo sa gusto na practice is somehow uh, ano lang, nakadepende lang sa culture sa Singapore, na hindi applicable sa Malaysia, hindi applicable sa Philippines. So may ara gid ya disagreement nga gakatabo nga though hindi na siya effective sa amon, hindi na siya the workable because this is our culture. So usually higher management would in different sub branches in the region would haggle and then would localize that implementation to make it workable in a local level of implementation. So also this one, there is also matawag na distress kay daw ka sometimes hindi gid ya acceptable for some culture, kay against sa ila belief, against sa ilang ginapatihan ang behavior sang other colleagues nila nga hindi same sa culture nila. So that's why my um my suggestion to eliminate or to minimize this cultural collision is just one word gid lang gid ya, respect. We just need to respect each other's culture, beliefs, and mga norms nila na somehow di sa aton acceptable, pero we need to understand and we need to be very accepting to the fact that we are in a globalized setup. And so here naman are the importance of determining nation's business practices. So first is to determine how this practice may affect the operations. So people's entrepreneurial attitude. So improve their awareness and sensitivity and by educating themselves. So perpetuates or omit an um, warranted or obsolete stereotypes to limit to be perceived as ignorant or rude that may result to jeopardizing business deal. So here, as I mentioned, that usually sub branches from regional counterparts um would haggle for those nga implementation of mga SLAs nila or mga standard operating procedures nila na i-implement across the region. So here, because they need to be very good in localizing those standard operating of procedures para at least wala may mareklamo nga daw hindi niya acceptable for us. So also most of the time these global businesses or business would make sure na may ara interaction across regional offices to make sure na may ara sila at least rapport kay especially with the advent of technology, most of these sub employees from different regions would only work online, so wala gid sila ya interaction in terms of understanding their cultures and understanding their traits. So may mga opportunities especially mga managers or some employees would have opportunity to fly into a training nga may ara ara ang iban nga managers man sa sub offices. So at here they would understand each other's perspective in life, attitudes, and do ka makakasbala ang stereotype nila nga, ay nga do mo na siya magsabat sa email, ay nga do ka bastos na siya magsabat sa call, ay kay tungod gali tig-agal intonation nila yan, tig-agal sila maghambal. So, you will gradually understand that it's just normal and you just need to accept that we have differences in terms of how we speak, how we act, how we perceive life, or how our beliefs are. So, yeah. So the idea of a nation, so delineating culture. So nations include various subcultures, ethnic groups, races, and classes, and a national culture must be flexible enough to accommodate such mixture. So may arap man tinatawag na cultural and multicultural, meaning that they have internalized more than one national cultures. So certain cultural attributes can link groups from different nations more closely than groups in given nation. Cultural value systems are set early in life but may change through choice or imposition and contact with other cultures. So here, as you can see na even though we are in a country, may ara kita ginatawag na mga subcultures, mga ethnic groups, and even mga classes. So dire mambalta nga maskin ara kita sa isa ka country, may ara gidya culture ang taga Negros, may culture miskis agani maskin city, 'di ba? May differences ganyan in terms of culture pa lang kung how we um eat certain way, may mga ginapatihan kita nga wala ginapatihan sang iban. So here, it is really common to each culture nga may mag-mix into different two to three or more pagani nga subcultures. So, um, that is also very ano man very crucial man to understand kay ay do ka amon ang for example ba ang mga Singaporean sa Singapore damo in a country do tatlo or apat daang dominating nga culture may ara mga Indian may ara Chinese may ara ah, Indonesian. So, kumbaga, melting pot of culture man usually si Singapore kay the neighboring kay dugat tupad-tupad lang na sila ah, sa for example sa Malaysia tupad lang na siya so do isa lang na siya kabas. So because mga migrants would actually build a community nga could affect the cultural differences in a specific country. Especially, Singapore is quite small, so dali lang ang disseminate or solidify sang isa ka cultural community. So, this is very vague as at the moment, pero as you can I think you are very well versed naman in terms of what you have seen in the television and in different movies and different series that you watch. So from there, you can really dig deep into their different culture kung ano ang cultures ang ginaplantaw nyo. So, very good man na siya in terms of understanding each culture nga gusto nyo kadtuan in the future or gusto nyo ubrahan in the future. So, may ginatawag man ta nga cultural imperialism. So, it involves imposing certain elements from an alien, so hindi bag-o nga culture. Such a forced change in laws may by an occupying country that over time becomes part of the subject culture. So, so ang example ko sa SG. So, dominantly, it's a Chinese country, gaya, or dominatedly, uh, damo Chinese dito. Pero with the kahit tungod ano lang sila, tupad-tupad lang with the other countries. So, the more nga migrate ang iban nga tagagwa, the more man nga do gina-occupy nila and ga-create sila subculture and a bigger culture. So kumbaga may dako nga culture since nga ga-solidify ang community sang mga migrants or gasululod nga bag-o or alien nga culture ga sangay-sangay ang culture nga ara sa isa ka country. So may ara ginatawag nga cultural coalition and then um so it contact among countries brings change. So cultural diffusion pala. So ga diffuse kumbaga ga do uh, gadamo na. So creolization or the change results in mixing cultural elements. So amo ni ang naging example sa Philippine na culture. So we are an example of mixture of different cultural elements kay ginsakop kita sang damo nga culture. That's why we gain a a unique cultural that are rooted from different cultures nga ano sa aton. So here, also, syempre, as a dominating cultural, ay, di ba may ara, dominating identity ang isa ka culture. So, with the advent of new migrants or new entrants, nga-create sila or ga-diffuse sila culture, we need to protect our culture. So, um, so here, it may result to disadvantage of limiting foreign contract, thus restraining the adoption of foreign technical advancement. Thus, most countries seek to preserve tradition that help maintain national cohesiveness while being open to changes to grow their economies. So, ang pinaka-perfect example, ginaya ang nga may ginatawag nga do model in protecting a culture ang mga Koreans, 'di ba? They are very good in protecting their culture and also disseminating and introducing their culture across the world. So, 'di ba? May ginatawag nga Koreanize na ang tanan. So, even in their music, in their food, maskin makita mo kay may mga western cooking show nga they really love to use the ingredients that are commonly used from Korea nga do hindi man na usually common sa western countries, but now they are using it because of the advent of uh, disseminating Korean culture across the world. So especially diri makita taman na we are very Koreanized as Filipinos because we really love K-pop, K-dramas, and even food. So that's why damo may mga sangyup-sangyup and we can see the rise of mga Korean marts nga we can buy different Korean products na so, the following are the importance of a common language. So here, a common language within countries is a unifying force. So commerce is easier among nations that share the same language because there is no need to translate everything. So take this, for example, when negotiating with a foreigner client, the negotiation will have smooth flow if both parties are speaking the same language. That's why may ginatawag kita nga national language for a specific country. So, dira, for example, sa Philippines, grabe, pilak, in every island or every region has its unique way of its own dialect. But with a unified or common national language, we could be unified in expressing our thoughts. So even though Chabacano ka, Bisaya ka, uh, and then Ilocano ka, na nag-meet ka mo sa isa ka place, so you need to communicate. So, di ba? Excuse. So you can use Tagalog as your common national language. So also in business, English is commonly known as the business language. So here, even though Koreans, 'di ba, Japanese or German, will be in the same meeting room to deal with a business or to put up an investment. So with the advent of i- with the use of English language, they could come up with a unified conversation. Uh, Kay isa lang ang ginagamit nila na lengguwahe na uh, pwede understand even though you have different um, dialects or common language. Yan. So also, we will discuss about the importance of religion. So here, it plays a great role in both nation and cultural building. So many strong values are the result of a dominant religion. Many of these religions are Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism. So it influence specific beliefs that may affect business, such as inhibiting the sale of certain products or performance of work at certain times. So here, may mga certain nga mga products nga uh, na hindi align sa beliefs ng isa ka religion. So that's why some businessman will not really push this such product to this religion kay against sa gani. So, syempre, kung pilito naton ang hindi na, 'di ba? So, mas masakit ina siya. So, wag nating pilitin ang ayaw at hindi pwede. So, move on na sa more deserving one. O, 'di ba? So, that's why that's the in a religion, it really builds in a culture. So it starts with um, a religion would affect the way they people or a specific culture, how they perceive life, how they believe in ano ang mga bawal sila nga pagkaon, even ang mga ways nila, even the way they dress. So it's all encompasses in the belief of their religion and what they believed in. So now let's proceed to behavioral practices affecting businesses. So here, the attitudes and values are composed of many cultural variables. So which both researchers and business people define differently, attaching various names to slightly different and sometimes overlapping concepts. There are various behavioral practices that affect businesses. So, may ginatawag kita nga social stratification. So it dictates a person's class status and financial rewards within the culture. So here, as an international business tycoon, you need to really understand different behavior that affect your business. So here, it's part of the research and business planning, especially this will dictate how you will be operating your business in the long run. Yan. So, the next topic will be the determinants of social stratification. So, first is the individual's achievement and qualifications, and the other one is their affiliation with or membership in certain group. So, although social stratification creates hierarchy, more formal cultures expect more status-oriented communication between hierarchical levels. Higher status individual, for example, may be offended if the people from a lower status address them by first name or without using a title. So here, as you can see, ang stratification bala ang do pagkasunod-sunod mo in the class. So dire is may mga culture nga okay lang nga maskin manager na sila or ara na sila sa higher management na just to address them in their names. Pero may iba naman niya nga may gusto gid ya sang specific way of addressing them. So if you are not aware of that, it will be at kumbaga hindi na respectful sila. So you disrespect them. So it may cause to misunderstanding. So here you really need to be open enough or vigilant enough if this person or this specific culture ano ang ilang napatihan in terms of their certification in social and on their social status. None. So let's move on to the ascribed group membership and acquired group membership. So what is the differences between these two? So the ascribed group memberships so determined by birth, including gender, family, age, caste, and ethnic, racial, or national origin, while acquired group membership include those based in religion, political affiliation, so educational placement, achievement, and profession. So ang ascribe is kung ano kaging bata. So it will 'di ba? Amo na ang group of for example, naging bata ko as an Asian. So amo na siya ang ascribe group membership ko. Pero tungod nga nag-ara na kuya sa ah, nag-push ko sa akong PhD. So, ara naman akong membership sa tinatawag nga mga PhD or Doctor of Education. So, for example, kung na-acquire ka and nakapasar ka sa bar. So, ang imong ah, profession or group of membership will be you will become a lawyer. So here it's amo na bala ang acquired or nakuha mo lang based of your effort, based of your achievements na. So nakuha mo tungod sa achievement mo, nakuha mo tungod sa pag-join mo sa isa ka religion or naging missionary ka binan. So, iba-iba. So, there are different implications of behavioral practices. So, first is, inan. So, race and ethnicity. So, it is gender-based roles. So, roles and expectation based on age and family ties. So, as ethnic and group racial groups, laws may enforce or undermine rigid certification. So, for example, dire ang sa Malaysia kay tungod nga damo na ang amo man na ang problem nila kay ah, tungod nga tupad-tupad ang nation nga may ara sa Malaysia for example tupad diya si Indonesia, tupad diya si Singapore, tupad diya si um tupad diya si Thailand. So, the more nga gakakadto ang iba-iba nga races and ethnicity sa Malaysia, ang ah, local nila nga workers gakadulaan opportunity for a specific job. For example, si Singaporean mas taas ang iya educational attainment. So, hatagan siya more opportunity compared to sa Malaysian nga applicant. So here, to protect this inequality in terms of the opportunity, the Malaysian government have like uh, impose nga dapat ang companies will be implementing or be employed will employ around 60% of its manpower for Malaysian citizens or local nila para at least to protect its race and ethnicity para dire at least ang mga company will be still uh, in terms of the culture is predominantly Malaysian ang culture. So with that, they can protect uh, behavioral practices through the race and ethnicity. So second is as gender-based groups. So country-specific differences is gender equality. So attitudes towards gender or some quite pronounced. So for example, sa Saudi, usually 80% of men is composed a company also 20% ng bayi. So here I think it's already with the new ang hari nila medyo naging open na sila kay medyo hindi na siya traditionalist gid nga hari. So medyo nag-open na sila in terms of accepting uh, women in workforce. So uh, may ara na din sila dagadamo na ang ila ah, mga rights as nga gina-implement for women. So amo na nga this in a country that is where gender-based grouping is predominant, so we cannot really push through even though we you are uh, maskin babae ka nga very damo ka achievement in compared to for example ga apply ka mo duwa is siya laki and then ikaw babae and then for example this company is very gender based in terms of grouping so ikaw yag overachiever ka gabi na imo achievement and may napatunayan ka na good in life while this one nga do okay lang so lang iya achievement pero mas ginpaboran siya kay tungod nga ikaw babae ka and then siya lalaki. So may mga amo na nga instances na it's very true to the real world and we need to accept that. So third is countries treat age group differently in each country it expresses its attitudes toward age in different ways. So all enforce age-related laws such as statute statutes applying to employment, driving privileges, right of to obtain products and services, and cigarettes, certain pharmaceutical bank accounts, and civic duty. So national differences towards employment age are substantial. So for example, very perfect example. So in terms of obtaining product and services, so for example, sa France, okay lang, maskin 13 years old ka, okay na nag-inom ka or mag-drink ka, alcoholic drink. While in the US, you need to be like 18 or 2 or 21 before you can obtain this product legally. So each country has its own grouping or behavioral practice. It differs gid in each country. So next is family-based grouping, or in some countries such as much in Latin America, most of important group membership is a family. So family-oriented ng mga Latino. So if a person's position in society depends heavily on family's social status or respectability, rather than individual achievement, often encounter difficulties in growing because owners are reluctant to share responsibility with professional managers hired from outside the family who may run operation more efficiently. So here naman, for example, may ara sila. ang isa ka company is family owned. Pero 'di ba, it usually it's run by the family members. But there are instances na they are employees nga medyo may mas alam or may mas capability compare sa family member sa owner. So hindi ma-push ang efficient operation because mas ginapaunahan ang membership uh, or family-based management compare sa skills. So there is it may cause to losses or inefficient management of funds or inefficient operation. So medyo amo na ang dilemma sang super family oriented mga ah, mga businesses kay they overlook the skill of their other employees and making sure that their family member is still on the higher ups and the managing position. So, it's true and we need to accept that especially kung ara ka sa ground nga ikaw to ang overachiever and then ng isa is member lang siya sa family. Yan. So, push pa din. Just do your best and make sure that you are doing your work and kasi in the long run they will be appreciative naman on the achievement that you will be doing. So let's move to work motivation. So we already discussed on different implications of behavioral practices such as the family base, age, gender, and race and ethnicity. So here, let us discuss naman on what are work motivation. So here it is the desire of material wealth wherein it is the prime motivation to work and it is positive for economic development. So as you all know that you are studying hard to land for a job in the future and to earn. So amo gid na ang pinaka-primary nga goal nyo. The next discussion is all about motivation in work. So I know you as students, you are really studying hard, di ba? Maski module-module lang na. But your end goal is really to finish your college and get your diploma. And in the future, after graduation, you will be landing for a job and really earn for yourself. Syempre, kapag may diploma, so it's your key uh to unemployment, 'di ba? So that's why this is really the main motivation. So material wealth is the prime motivation to work and it's positive for economic development. Kay kung may ari na ka mo work, so syempre may ari na ka mo um purchasing power to really push through and to buy your needs and your wants. So also it's the values of Weber's concept. So namely that um, self-discipline, hard work, honesty, and a belief in just world foster work motivation and thus economic growth. So motivation to work is also influenced by perceived likelihood of success and it rewards versus failure. Generally, people have little enthusiasm for effort when the likelihood of success seems to be easy or too difficult. So dire ang meaning sid na is means motivation is really to make sure that you will be successful um, in doing what you are tasked to do. So here, kis ang ang isa ka employee gaka motivate kay tungod nga ang reward after sining task is very bongga or for example kapag naging successful in nga project would mean promotion for that person. So kis amo na ang gakapa-motivate man sa aton. And then kis ang dapat discourage is kis akong tamaan ka difficult ka daw tama, sobra-sobra na gid niya though hindi na gid niya tama as an employee though gina-exploit nako. So somehow the amo man na ang gagat demotivate sa katawo. Pero usually when we as a person an employee when you are challenged in a positive manner you will really you will strive for to be better uh not only for yourself but to be a better person in general, 'di ba? So that's why motivation is influenced by perceived success and reward. Yan. So the next is when high uncertainty of outcome is combined with the likelihood of a positive reward for success and little or no reward for failure. We find the greatest work enthusiasm. So, with the element of surprise, 'di ba? Pero kung lantawon ta, kung never mong gina-expect nga ma-push mo 'to and then ma-recognize sang company ang imo effort. So the next time i-triple mo pang imo effort ang imo perseverance towards your work. So maging more active ka pa in doing your best. So diri makita na the more nga gakakita sa management ang imo effort ang imo hard work the more man nga ma-push ka into your limits and do your best yan. So next is the hierarchy of needs theory. So I think it's already discussed in the previous sa iba niyong mga subjects. So usually this is the hierarchy of needs. So kung nga may motivation ay sa katao. So first is physiological. So syempre ga trabaho kita para may pambakal ta pagkaon, pambayad kuryente, tubig kag may ara ta pambayad sa balay or pangbayad sa luta. So, this needs is for before our security. So security means it's a safe physical emotional environment. So we need to satisfy this before triggering social needs. So dapat, 'di ba, dapat syempre kapag may shelter ka na, may food and may basic necessity ka na in life. So dapat you feel secured in your environment. So next kapag medyo na feel mo na okay, okay, secure na ako on daily needs. So, din naman, ma-push ka naman to somehow trigger your social need wherein it's the motivation effect of affiliation such as peer acceptance when motivated to satisfy your esteem needs. So, din naman, syempre, ikaw danay and then outside your bubble so you will seek emotional attachment to your peers. So, for example, dira ah, mangita ka affiliations or ah, dapat may 'di ba syempre dapat balance ang personal and social life mo nan. So here the next is kapag na-balance mo na ang both inner bubble of need mo and then outer bubble of need mo, syempre next is the esteem. So this is the need of bolstering our self-image through recognition, attention, and appreciation. So the highest order need calls self-actualization. So dire syempre doon ka ang pinaka-need mo. So 'di ba, dire naman is the inner core mo naman ang ano kay kisa 'di ba ang pinaka budlay gidya i-develop is your inner core kay kisa diri ang esteem nga ginatawag or ang confidence nga ginatawag kung hindi mo masatisfy ang physiological need mo, kung di ka feel nga daw secure ka, and then daw feel mo daw antisocial ka or wala may gaas self-esteem mo. So ang self-esteem mo wala gid siya develop or ang self-image mo uh, is blurry, is not clear for you. So here, ang pinaka pick gid in the hierarchy of needs is kumbaga ang self-actualization. So it refers to self-fulfillment, also becoming that you are capable of everything. So, kumbaga, kung ikaw na-secure mo na ang daily need, ang daily pangangailangan mo, and then you feel secure about, for example, kung may job ka, and then in the environment that you lived in, and then you are well accepted by the society and by your friends. So, kumbaga, medyo may boost of confidence ka na. So, diri makita mo nga do ka, amo ng pinakabudlay nga hierarchy ang self-actualization. Kay with the nature of human ni- human nature gina siya ya. Nga hindi ta ma-satisfy ang aton self with what we are currently have. So fulfilling our own self is really hard to achieve kay may ginapangita pa kita nga kulang. 'Di ba? Mahambal ta nga nga successful man akong career, may ara man ko love life, may ara man ko friends. Ano pa ang kulang? I felt na may kulang pa sa akon. Nan. So diri ang pinaka-crucial nga stage na maybe kis through making sure that you are secured internally, physically, emotionally, but sometimes you forget that we need to secure also our spiritual capacity or our spiritual being. So maybe amo na ang kulang sang iban, amo na ang kailangan pangitaon sang iban, pero amo na lain-laing kita needs, and this hierarchy will really depend on you on how you can satisfy it or how you will find it. Yan. So, next topic is all about relationship preferences. So here, 'di ba, for example, we already in a company. So here, each employee, country to country, have preferences to tend that is different in terms of interacting with their bosses, subordinates, and peers. So, considerable evidence suggests that people perform better when the nature of their interaction fits their preferences. So, focus, di ba? Um, mm, the more nga hindi ka open sa tabo nga ga-surround mo, the more nga hindi ka ka-perform well sa task kay may inhibitions ka, hindi ka fully function kitungod nga ay do hindi ko na siya ya mag-interact ya kay do hindi ko siya feel. So do sabotahiyon niya ko. So may mga amo ka na nga mga notion sa imself nga ga-create sang barrier to make sure that uh, your interaction with other employees will be smooth lang. So, it's given fact that we have different preferences, and sometimes this also really affects our performance, and it's also human nature na uh, we have unique preferences towards sa gusto ta na peers that's why ang iban ay do hindi ko diya belong kay do hindi ni amo ang circle nga gusto ko i-nurture. So that's why some really opted to find another job nga fit ang ila personality to the environment. So masuggest ko lang kay employee would stay because nga uh, first is they love their job. Second is they love the people that they are working uh, with. So ang tao nga ga-surround sila gusto nila. That's why kisado maskin gamay ang pay or gamay ang benefit or gamay ang makuha nila. Pero hindi na ang basihan kay the more nga hindi ka stress sa work, the more nga daw gina-consider mo lang siya as like do budlay na siya pangitaon sa isa ka job kaya siyempre work is work pa din. You are evaluated by your output. But sometimes the work becomes uh, easier and smoother kapag okay ang rapport mo with your other um em- sa other empleyado nga ga-interact ka nan. So here there are in a relationship preferences, may ginatawag tanga power distance. So, ano na siya? So, the companies are well advised to align management styles with superior subordinate interaction preference. So, that's why usually in every country nga may ara ang isa ka international business, iba-iba ang management style. Kaya ang micromanagement hindi siya applicable in this culture. Ang sobraan naman ka freedom, di naman siya applicable in this specific culture kay abusuhon or such. So, it should be a balance of a management style in each specific culture. So here, may kinatawag nga high power distance. So, ano na siya? So, people prefer little consultation between two tiers and one of the two management styles. So, autocratic or ruling and unlimited authority or paternalistic regulating conduct by supplying needs. So, dire, may ara naman sila little consultation between two tiers and one management styles. So, it's a complete opposite to low power distance. They prefer consultative styles. So, interestingly, managers who prefer autocratic style or of superior subordinate relationship are also quite willing to delegate and to accept decision making by, excuse me, by a majority of subordinates. So, di rin naman medyo 'di ba, makita mo naman sa pangalan. So, kung low power distance, so ang distance nila is kumbaga hindi layo ang distansya sang superior to the subordinates. So may consultative style ko. So kumbaga medyo lapit may gina-develop gid ang rapport within the superior to the subordinates. So here medyo ga-open ang mga subordinate in accepting the decision, especially kung it requires change, 'di ba? And then in terms of delegating the task, medyo open sila ya. Unlike sa high power distance nga do medyo traditional nga do, ako, boss ko ya, ikaw ya, dra ka, kay sunod ka kung ano ang ginatugo sa mo. So very autocratic or unlimited authority gid. May kumbaga um, higher ups be higher ups and then um, entry level be just the mere follower of the higher management na. So kumbaga wala gid may interaction or wala may rapport. So here it really depends on the culture kung ano ang applicable in terms of uh, kung ano ang pwede nga ma-work sa ila kay different culture has its unique ways of accepting this authority nga gina-impose ang management. So also in terms of making sure that the work environment is safe. So next is we will be discussing about high individualism and then high collectivism. So here naman, ang individualism describes an employees prefer to fulfill the short time and improve skills outside the organization. So they receive direct monetary compensation as opposed to fringe benefit, and engage in personal decision making and on the job challenges. While high collectivism, an employee penchant for dependence on organization through training, satisfactory workplace condition, and good benefit. So, diri naman, kumbaga, ari is, ang isa ko makita ta na monetary ang iya naman niya motivation or preferred na do reward. While this one, ang other one is high collectivism naman. Ang prefer niya naman is training naman niya, kumbaga, skill improvement or self-development naman ang gusto niya. Kumbaga, soft skills naman ang gusto niya i-develop. While the other one is uh, monetary, kumbaga ang physiological or ang monetary value ang value niya. So, each factor has its own naman reason nga gusto na nila. So, hindi naman pwede nga, ay, nga mukhang pera ang high individualism niya. Ado yun, do ka, o, do ka, an, anong perfect na term man. Ang high collectivism is do ka, um, gusto niya do ma-improve iya self ya. Nan. So, diri makita ta nga wala man na siya better or mas okay ang isa versus sa isa, but this is really depends on the motive of an individual kung ano ang gusto niya na. So ang na gani may ara gid kita ya ginatawag nga preferences. So, next naman, let's discuss the risk-taking behavior. So, there are four types of risk-taking behavior, namely the certainty avoidance, trust, future orientation, and fatalism. So, in this concept, so in the risk-taking behavior, so each culture differs in uh, people's willingness to accept the status quo or control over destiny. So, may mga risk takers, ganyan nga mga culture, may iba naman niya nga hindi. So, let us discuss the four types. So, let's go first to uncertainty avoidance. So, here, most employees prefer to follow a set of rules even they believe that breaking them may be in company's best interest. So they also tend to stay with the current employers for a long time, preferring the certainty of present possession over the uncertainty of the future elsewhere. When uncertainty avoidance is high, superiors may need to be more precise in their direction to subordinates who typically don't want to be responsible for actions that counter their superiors' want. So, um, I could really relate on this because I have been in this phase in my career. Because ara ko sa moment sa akon career big nga do ka naging complacent ko nga do okay lang ang tanan do ka um wala ko even though nga gamay lang ang pay but gakadlokan ko nga mag-transfer sang iba sa iba nga work kay wala ko kabalo kung ano ang uncertainty or ano ang culture sang transferan ko. So medyo may hadlock factor. So pero um dito ko na-realize in the in the long run nga do ka with this thinking wala growth nga matabo sa akon. So if kung diri lang ko kung hasta magtigulang ko. So all the same maybe kapag may nag-resign ba nga manager, ma-promote ko or baske basi dugay pa. So that's the uncertainty nga do ginahadlokan ko nga kung maghalin ko diin ko makadto kay do my job is very specific in terms of the role. So kung mag-transfer ko, it's a whole new experience for me. So since nga ako very familiar na ko diri nga na experience, so nga mahalin pa ko be, 'di ba? So umo na ang thinking. So medyo may takot factor na siya, pero ang ginaano mo is gina-avoid mo ang uncertainty. So you will prefer nga magstay na lang kay tungod nga nahadlok ka sa uncertainty. So in the long run, so may mga moments man nga daw daw may mga nagpukaw sa akon nga daw, okay, it's time to move forward and to really push through an additional challenge for yourself. So amo to na-realize ko in the long run nga staying with the avoidance of uncertainty will really limit your growth as individual. So I hope na kamo in the future you will be risk takers pero calculated risk yapon when really moving into one career to another. Yan. So here the next risk-taking behavior is trust. So country differences in evaluation of such statements, most people can be trusted and you cannot be too careful in dealing people. Many more Norwegians than Brazilians, for example, regard most people as trustworthy. Where trust is high, business cost tends to lower because managers spend less time pausing over possible contingency and monitoring every action for compliance and more time producing, selling, and innovating. The degree of trust may differ between what people consider in their in group and out group. So kis amo ni ang ano man ga trigger man sa um sa isa ka company in dealing with their employees. Kay may iban nga culture nga they are really hard to trust for other culture nga ga-evolve sa ila or ga-interact sila. Kay amo na gani different degree of trust in every people. So here as you can see na with the trust pa lang 'di ba nga word, it's very difficult kay it really encompasses your belief in life. It reflects your upbringing kung ano ang culture nga may ara ka. So, it's natural na sa isa ka culture kung very trustworthy trusting sila or medyo may hesitant sila to trust others. So, but as an employee nga outside sa ila culture, you need to make them assured na pwede ka nila pagkatiwalaan or you can do your task well na maskin pabayaan kanila, you can do the task in a positive A++ na ano na output nga pwede mo i-produce nan. So next is future orientation. It may be easier for companies to motivate workers through such delayed compensation programs as retirement plans. Lastly, if people believe strongly in self-determination, will be willing to work hard to achieve goals and to take responsibility for performance. So dire amo man na ang risk-taking behavior sang iban nga daw ka ay ako so sige since na ay ang company ko I'm sure na may ara siya program for me in the future. So mas stay na lang ko sa iya. So I will take the risk to stay here as long as nga as long as I can or as long as my capabilities will be still fit in this job. So I will be responsible for my performance. So that's why they are really to willing to work hard for a long period of time to really achieve this future orientation nga may ginhatag assurance ng company sila. So the last for type of risk-taking behavior is fatalism. So this is the belief that all events are predetermined and therefore inevitable. So this is everything is by faith. O kumbaga, faith, kumbaga, amo ng root word niya, faith. So fatalistic if they believe every event is life as inevitable, they're less likely to accept the basic cause and effect of relationship between work and reward. In countries the high rate of fatalism, people plan less for contingencies such as not buying insurance. So religious differences play a significant role in this regard. Conservative and fundamentalist group, for instance, are most likely to view the occurrence that it is God's will. So, nan, medyo part man tadi as Filipino, kay gapati kita yung uh, we have this culture na kamot me, 'di ba? Kung ano ang ano, bala na si Batman. O na, 'di ba? Ang na ang permit ang nga ginapatihan na bala na si Batman. Kung ano matabo. So, ah, kung nami edi good, kung law ay edi sige, let's make it work. So, medyo ang term ta nga mag-risk or move forward, will stop us kay kumbaga wala ta contingency or wala ta plano kung ano ang matabo sa atin in the future kay kapati ta nga bahala na nan. So this will also lead us or drag that us in terms of moving forward or taking the risk to move forward kay gapati kitang nga it's all about the faith that we believe in nan. So bahala na si Batman is not good mentality, but having a plan is better. So ang baga nila, if you failed to plan, you plan to fail nan. Amo gina siya even in a real life. So next, let's discuss naman about communications. So communication is not exclusive on the spoken language. So also it's evolves into written and sign languages. So translating one language directly into other is not as straightforward as it may seem. So some words simply do not have direct translations, and sometimes any language words means different in different contexts. So language barrier that usually result in a little and only into embarrassment. Kumbaga, kung lain ba lang na-translate mo. So, do ka amo ni gali nga face lain na gali ang connotation sa ila. So it will result to embarrassment. So poor translation, however, can cause commercial disputes. So for example, kung um uh, gadil ka sis and then you mistranslate a phrase, so medyo uh, ma-perceive ka as disrespectful, so hindi na matuloy ang inyo deal. So it is advised to choose words used in communication carefully. So even when all parties to a communication come from countries that share official language, don't assume that understanding will go smoothly. So 'di ba, ara balakis 'di ba, Australia, mm, UK, and then US. So for example, sila ano sila, maupod sila sa isa ka place. So English ang ilang spoken language, but they have different terms and phrases nga ginagamit nila in lain-lain na meaning, 'di ba? So for example, ang candy sa um per, ah ang sweater sa US ginagamit. Ang ano na gali sa UK pullover na siya and then dili sa Australia jumper naman siya. So different words but they are just identifying into one object lang. So sometimes we need to be very careful on the terms and words that we use to eliminate that miscommunication. Kay miscommunication will really result to a serious problem gid ya. Nan. So we need to be very, very vigilant, very knowledgeable on each culture that we need to deal with, especially if we really want to um, uh, deal with this for a specific culture. Na. So, spoken and written word language are not only our means of communication. So, we constantly exchange messages through host of nonverbal cues. So, isa may mga silent language kita nga ginatawag. So, it's includes color associations, sense of appropriate distance, time, status quos, language, body language, and prestige. So, amo na so different um culture as this different sign languages meaning. So especially let's move on to color. So sometimes different culture uh, have interesting aspect in culture's silent language. For a product to succeed, its color obviously must be considered the consumer's frame of reference. So hindi na ta pwede kasi sa color, sa packaging ta kay nami na siya in our own eye. Pero we need to really make sure man nga we need to study it first before we produce it. Based on the consumer preferences nga gusto ta ibaligya ang product. So, colors invoke distinct connotation in different countries, such as being lucky or unlucky being associated with a specific business. For example, ang pink 'di ba sa aton very feminine na siya. Pero sa Japan niya, it means masculinity. So, dira pa lang iba-iba na ang perspective ta sa color. So, sa iban ang black it connotates uh, kumbaga pagluluksa or uh, do grieving. Pero sa iban gali do ka it's happy gali siya yung connotation, 'di ba? So each meaning of unspoken language may differ to each culture. So we need also to be vigilant. Na ang word de sa discussion for the culture is respect and vigilant. Nan. So next is time and punctuality. So very kita di familiar kita din sa time and punctuality. So culturally, there are different ways of looking at time. So ang magani may ginatawag kita yung Filipino time. So sa US naman niya, sila naman niya kapag business meeting, 10 minutes na advance usually ay na sila. So we need to be very, very vigilant on the punctuality and the time value nga gina-input sang culture nga ideal ta. Body language or kinesics. The way people walk, touch, move their bodies also differs from culture. Indeed, very few gestures are universal. So as you can see in our illustration sa module, ang amo na nga sign has different meaning. So ang iban kwarta, ang iban okay, ang iban ay lako si, ang iban. So wala gid ya universal nga nga gesture kay each culture has its own perception or meaning to its gestures. So another factor of silent language relates to person status. So particularly in organizational setting. So this one, so related man sa previous nga discussion nga ang individual status in a company or an organization, it really differs kung ano ang gusto nila nga itawag sila or okay lang sila nga maskin first name basis maskin higher ups na sila. So um kumbaga may ara gid sila ya ginatawag nga um sense of authority kumbaga. So different culture has its different source of authority. So here, we already discussed about different risk behavior factors, ano ang kailangan ta i-observe in terms of the way we communicate, maybe it's a silent language or the written and the vocal languages uh, that we spoke. So now let's talk about dealing with different cultural differences. So host cultures do not always expect foreigners to adjust to them. Sometimes local society regards foreigners and domestic citizens differently. In other instances, citizens may actually feel their culture are being mocked when foreigners bend over backward to make adjustment and such as dressing local traditional garb. So for example, kung ara ka sa Middle East and then ikaw isa ka babae, so it's disrespectful for them kung hindi ka magsuksok sang ila traditional nga bayo kay for them it's not showing that you are openly accepting their culture kay gusto mo gid mapalain hindi mo gusto mabilong sa ila doon mo na ang perception nila so kung makadto ka for example sa Saudi or sa Middle East nga mga country so be very vigilant or especially ang iban sa inyo may plano nga makadto man to in the future so be very vigilant and then part man na usually sa training nga ginahatag sa mga agencies kung how you will be interacting with this type of culture. So, you need to learn and to accept it by heart that the culture that they are practicing. So when doing business in similar culture, companies usually have to make fewer adjustment to may overlook subtle differences. Obviously, some countries are much as like others usually because they share many characteristics such as language, religion, geographic location, ethnicity, and level of economic development. So, nan. So, may ara gid dia usually man ang mga businesses nga ini nga ga-invest into specific uh, location, gina-make sure man nila nga medyo same-same ang culture para wala na sila may adjustment or kung may adjustment man medyo subtle na lang hindi gid amo na ka-vast para at least ang pinakadugay nga mag-take place into position ang ano gid ang adjustment period. So 'di ba ikaw isang pag first year mo be sanay ka sa senior high ka nga doon ka okay lang sang mga subject but now college ka na, sa first year college ka, medyo ang adjustment period mo do maara 3 months, 2 months, or after pa end term, so dito ka pa naghabol nga amo ni gali ang culture sa college ya. So, amo na, every adjustment period has its different timeline. So, amo na ang gusto man nila i-eliminate sa mga international business investor kaya they make sure that the culture that they will be investing into may be similar or lapit-lapit. So also, when company moves into culturally similar foreign country, it should encounter fewer cultural, 'di ba, as discussed. So fewer na lang gid ang adjustment nila. So even if the home and host countries are seemingly similar cultures, people the host country may reject the influx of foreign practices because they see them as additional step that threaten their self-identity. Nan. So, usually, 'di ba, self-acceptance or kumbaga ang adjustment period amo na da ang pinaka-crucial man kay it requires change. So change is very hard to swallow kay dako dako nga change. So dugay siya i-digest gid ya. So with a thousand of minute cultural dimension, it may not be easy to discern operating embediments by comparing countries on the broad ones and that are both obvious and studied. So since you already discussed about dealing with cultural differences, so let's move on to another topic. So it's all about the company and management orientations. So there are different orientations that we will discuss here. So first is the polycentrism. So, a polycentric organization tends to believe that its business units abroad should act like local company. Given the unique problem, the publicity about them often inherit in foreign ventures. It's not surprising that many companies develop polycentric perspective. To compete effectively, an international company and its foreign units must usually perform some functions differently from the competitors it encounters abroad in order uh, to have an advantage over them. They may, for instance, need to sell the market new product, introduce and produce old ones differently. Thus, the overly polycentric firms may really rely too heavily in imitating proven host countries' practices and in the process lose the innovative edge it honed at home. So usually, di ba lang ang balta before na think globally but act locally. Amo na siya ang concept ni. So, dire global organizations or businesses would really think global and making sure that they can expand much of the territory. But in their expansion, they are making sure that their actions are very localized even though they need to alter different products nga acceptable in the market. So for example, um formulation, iban-iban ang formulation sa isang ka product in different countries. So, damo ko na encounter my friends in UAE or in Dubai would really tell me na ang formulation sang Coke dito is less sweeter than sa Philippines kay tungod sa it's part of their culture. So, it's part of the regulation nga gin-impose ng government nila. Nga amo na ni ang acceptable sugar content nga pwede mo ibaligya sa tao and even ang packaging iba ang fonts na very very relevant kung diin sila ara. So that's the example of polycentrism na ang concept of think globally, act locally. So next is ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism reflects the conviction that one's own culture is superior to the other countries. In international business, the term is usually applied to a company so strongly committed to the principle what works at home will work abroad. So the foreign practices tend to ignore um, differences in cultures and markets. Obviously, much of that work at home will, in fact, work abroad. Further, concentrating on national differences in terms of averages of overlooks specific variation within countries. A company may be able to deal with outliers, or even though the average person in the country has strong cultural bias against the company does its own country. So, diri naman, gapati ang mother company nga ang ilang culture is superior than the others. Excuse me. So, diri, um, they tend to apply everything nga ginapatihan nila, ang every practices nga sunod nila sa home country, sa mga foreign constituents nila. So sometimes ang may gaka-ignore nila nga ang differences in terms of ang culture and sa market. So maskin nga ang iban hindi na-accept gina-accept ang ilang culture, pero they are very strong that this type of practices will still work even it will be applied abroad. So here is another type, the geocentrism. So, integrates company and host country practices as well as some entirely new ones. So, geocentrism requires companies to balance informed knowledge of their own organizational culture with home and host country needs, capabilities, and constraints, because it encourages innovation and improve the likelihood of success. Geocentrism is the preferred approach for the companies to succeed in foreign cultures and markets. So, Are, it's a combination of ethnocentrism and polycentrism. So, diri naman, gina-impose Manila kung ano ang ginapatihan sang mother country, pero may mga gina-blend in sila nga do very localized nga practices nga pwede ma-adapt for each. So for example, in their core values, may ara siguro tatlo out of five, may duwa nga very localized, and then tatlo nga very regionalized or nga ginasulod sang tanan nga region, and then ang iban pwede man na gina-alter nila based on their likelihood or kung ano ang local nila nga practice, para at least medyo tailor fit man sa gyapon into local setup, but making sure that they are compliant to what their mother or country host or home country na ginapatihan. So next is the strategies for instituting change. So you know that change is very hindi siya dali nga matulon sang iban. So people do not necessarily accept change readily. So may iban nga ready na, ang iban wala pa. So first is value system. The more something contradicts our value system, the harder it is to accept. Diba? So, kung ang change is against our value system, so do kabudlay na siya patihan. Diba? So, for example, ikaw, isa ka model, and then, ikaw is very strong Christian person kagidya. And then, ang imo i-introduce is something medyo masukso ka hijab, and then the very Islam ang product. So ando change nga gina-institute si mo do against si imo value systems, do hindi mo siya dali ma-accept as your as a change in general. So one reason is economic. So because of the population has traditionally cannot afford such commodity, which led them not liking it. Another reason is cultural. People in that area have religious religious taboos. Thus, it's hard to pursue them to like it, even the government intervention. So, 'di ba, for example, um, in a specific community nga very far lang be, na very wala sila means um of for example, sila sa kabukiran. 'Di ba, usually wala man 'tong mga seafood, yeah. So for example, wala sila yan nasanay sa pagkaon seafood. So nasanay sila sa mga utan-utan and then meat, ganun. So kapag medyo na-introduce sila sa seafood, kapag ikaw, 'di ba, for example, ikaw merchant and then nag-introduce ka sila seafood. So maskin ano pa na nga pagka-discount mo sila, ano pa na ang pagka-promote mo sa ila, kung wala na nila, ako hindi na nila usually ka-afford ang mga ginabaligya mo. So hindi gina nila baklon kay tungod nga before ado is abala ang idea is don manol sila So hindi man sila nga wala sila hindi nila gusto na, pero wala lang sila nasanay in their system. So, kumbaga, hindi nasanayan sila sistema. So, kasi budlay ipa-inject sa ang bago sa sistema nila kay nasanayan na nila before, 'di ba? So, another reason is also cultural. For example, na na this culture wala gid kaon niya um pork. So for example, predominantly, for example, that country is Islam. So kung mamaligya ka to siomai nga pork, 'di ba? Versus sa beef na pork. So, maskin i-discount pa na sang government ang imo tariff and taxes mo maskin i-push pa na sang government, wala gina hindi gina siya yabakbalan kay tungod na it's against their religious belief and value. So next is the cost benefit analysis of change. So introducing products and practices abroad is something sometimes costly. Very costly gid kis kay tungod na you cannot really tell nga kung ma-boom siya in an instant or ang iya pick is will take time. So it may result to it result in greatly improved performance and only marginal change. Thus, a company must consider the expected cost-benefit relationship on what it does abroad. So, very part man na siya sa planning, very kabalo dapat maging realistic sila kung ang benefit bala is dasig lang makita or dugay in a long run mo pa makita. So, dire makita ta na ang cost benefit will necessarily be constitute with the change nga i-push mo in terms of introducing new products sa system nga usually wala na siya ginagamit before. So, resistance to too much change. So, mas gani isa lang ka-change, di ba? Isabudlay na siya batunon. How much more pa kung 3 or more or 10 na changes pa. When a lot change have been, excuse me, implemented at a time, employees' morale declines led to greater employees turnover, resulting also for revenues to fall because stakeholders saw the change in format as too radical. Thus, too much move in order to obtain, thus to do such move in order to obtain more employee and stakeholders to accept the this phase. Um, it should be phased in plans to change a little more gradually. So dapat, 'di ba? Syempre hindi man for example, isa ka pa ang change ang imo i-implement, dapat is-slice mo man into different into slices man para at least gradually bala makaon sang mga stakeholders or employees ang change nga gusto mo pa-implement, especially kung damo gidya or total system ang i-change mo. So sikis they felt like nga ang worth nila is degraded, kumbaga kung damo nga change ang ginawa nga hindi pa ni enough ang system nga gina-implement before nga kailangan pa sa change how. So amo na ang medyo thinking nila nga it still works while you need to change it. So with this though gakadulaan sila sang worth nila kay tungod nga they perceive that this is still working, nga kailangan naton bag-ohon ang gagana pa na. So also, participation is crucial in instituting change. So this discuss proposed changes and stakeholders such as employees, suppliers, customers, and the like in advance. So the discussion might help management assess the strength of their resistance, stimulate stakeholders to recognize the need of change, and ease of fear about the consequences of change. People might need to be satisfied uh, that that management has at least listen to them regardless of the decision it ultimately. So amo na din mo, so communication must be a two-way, must be two-way. Kumbaga, kung may change ka, you need to hear out kung ano ang kailangan sa mga constituents mo. So kung at least kumbaga may mix, balancing ka mo bala kung ano ang kailangan pa, kung ano ang kulang, kung ano ang kapwede idugang sa i-impose mo bago mo siya totally nga i-institute sa inyo system. Kay the more nga uh, surprise and change, the more nga ga-resist ang tao. Pero the more nga ginapa-intindi mo sa ila, the more nga you felt nga ginapa-feel mo sila nga they are well listened to, the more nga ga-participate sila sa change nga gusto mo nga matabo. So here, reward sharing ang next. So sometimes a proposed change may have no foreseeable benefit for those whose support is needed. Company develop that means of sharing gains with stakeholders both within and outside company. Production workers, for example, may have little incentive to try new work practices unless they see some eminent benefit for them. Siyempre, kailangan kunting suhol man balahaw nga daw ka. Kunting push nga daw ka. Okay, sige, dugangan ta ang workload mo, pero kapag na-hit mong specific quota mo, may ara ka reward para at least, di ba, change ka in terms of sales target, pero may ara sila bala motivation para to achieve that target. Hindi lang nga daw ma-impose ka, oh, ikaw, subong, from $20,000 ang imo target, i-30 ta. Oh, by hook o by crook, kailangan mo na i-hit. So, ka-pressure ang tao. So, wala siya motivation to move forward. Kaya tungod nga, wala mo siya ginatawan, reward sharing, di ba? So, next is cultural bridges. So, closely linked to opinion leadership are the attributes of people deciding about and the implementing changes abroad. People in the host country are persuaded not only by the detail of proposal but also their confidence in the presenter's technical qualification, understanding, and host countries' constraints and flexible attitude towards reaching solution. Excuse me. Even if the cultures are from other countries, these individuals may discern the new culture more quickly than unicultural individuals in such way that the young bilingual children have easier time to than monolingual children in learning other language later on. They have empathy to for divergent overviews and more positively perceived in the host country because assumption that they are not pursuing an ethnocentric agenda. So here, cultural bridges. So for example, may ara sila you will tap ang dogi na lead dogi ang doga push gid bala sa ila nga manager nila para at least dito kaya ma-inject change. Kung at least dito may catalyst of change ka pero ikaw hindi ka directly ang gapabago sila para at least dire more open sila in participation, more open sila into sharing their suggestion sa opinion leader nga gin-attach mo para sa change nga gusto mo i-implement. Kumbaga, ano bala, may ginakita sila nga okay, acceptable, manigali ang change ni. Kay okay man sa amon opinion leader nga ginasundan. Nan. So also timing is very crucial. So dapat ang change nga i-implementa, it should be well planned in terms of timing. Kay tungod kung hindi pa time na gina-push tagid, the more nga hindi maging successful ang change, the more nga naging resistant ang tao. Nan. So learning abroad. So remember, as companies gain more experience in foreign operation, they may learn as well the impact of valuable knowledge. Knowledge that proves that as useful as home as it in the host country. Such learning may concern any business function. However, access to research and development personnel is particularly potent advantage in operating abroad. Companies should examine economies and businesses abroad that are performing well in order to determine practices they can emulate. So this one, amo ni ang very crucial nga benefit nga makuha sang isa ka international business kay they learn best practices on across their venture abroad. So dire bits of information makuha nila in every branches that they have. So kapag nakuha na nila ang mga practices nga ini, they can come up with a broader and more structured na planning na um, they can disseminate across uh, the branches nga maka as one bala they can achieve the goal sa mga achiever nga businesses branches nila and then help this non-performing ones nga mag-excel man. So here, research and development gidya ang maka-benefit din kag sila man later on maka-come up sila sang better ways of improving their services and managing their people. So that will be all about the discussion. So if you have questions, kindly send it over to me uh, on our GCs. So I am very much open with your questions or any learnings nga pwede nyo man ma-share sa sa aton GC. So let's now discuss about the learning activities nga so I hope na medyo clear na ang importance of understanding each and every culture in an international company because the bottom line and the gist learning gusto ko impart sa inyo for this lesson is really first is respect kung ano ang culture and beliefs ng mga constituent naton nga hindi same sa aton. And then also have the ability to learn kung ano man ang ila culture kay para at least you will have a better understanding on how they act, how they interact, how they communicate para malimit naton ang miscommunication, malimit naton ang misunderstanding towards our constituents um, across nations. And also, lastly, you need to be very vigilant on the changes nga gakatabo, and you need to be very accepting, especially that if the change uh, is new to you, and kumbaga ang change is not aligned to your value of system, so you have the free will to move forward and to look for something job nga align sa imo yang nga value system. And then may ara ka man free will to really choose the culture nga gusto mo. So, as a tip lang, no, when applying for a job, make sure nga ang culture, during the interview, you should ask about the culture of the company, kung ano ang usual nga ang culture sang company, para you have already an understanding na in the future aamo ni gali ang akon maging life with that company, para at least hindi ka you can prepare yourself kag hindi ka ma-culture shock nan. So, for our learning activity, so for example, ikaw is a managing director of Jollibee Foods Corporation, and then you will be planning to have a new branch in Glasgow, Scotland. So, ang tip ko sa inyo, you need to search first about the culture of Scotland, and then para ma-understand mo kung paano mo atakihon ang mga question. So here, uh, you are a leader of the planning team of Jollibee Foods Corporation. So applying what you have learned in our lesson, answer the following question. So enumerate five problems that the company may encounter in relation to the cultural aspect. So, di ba, nag-research ka na and then nakita mo, ay, amo ni gali ang culture nila. So, i-compare mo ah, sa current o sa Philippines na gina-follow. And then, um, dire makita mo ang possible na cultural differences from Scotland to mother, which is Philippines, 'di ba? Host country is ang Philippines. So here you must look into the fact regarding the culture of people living in Glasgow, and also the culture of the country, Scotland as a whole. So after that, create possible problems based on the facts generated and explain why such problem is possible. So, nakita mo nyo ang cultural differences. So, enumerate nyo na and then i-explain nyo each differences or ang five differences. Paano siya maging future problem. And then give at least two concrete solution for every problem you have enumerated and in question number 1. So, syempre, kung may problem, since kamo ang planning head, kamo ang mag-give man sa possible na solusyon. And then number 3, what are the steps and strategies of your team that you will create so that the opening of the new branch by your company in the foreign state will be successful. So at least give 5 to 10 strategies that you will do. So kumbaga ano lang niya siya inyo own understanding and strategy. So usually makita nyo man na sa internet kung anong ang search ka mo about strategies of food chain, restaurants in putting up a business abroad. So duha mo na ang pangitaon nyo or research nyo. Kay para at least i-correlate nyo kung ang strategy nga na research nyo is applicable sa problem nga na come up nyo. So at least dira makita nyo kung ano ang possible nga maging applicable strategies sa inyo. And then, kung wala na di question, so you can just ask question about the assessment. But very, very clear naman ang instruction here. So you can start answering your this one. And then the next one is this is the quiz. So in essay form, so explain the importance of understanding a foreign country's culture when engaging in international business. So here, introduction, body, and conclusion pa din. So, research ka mo danay kung ano ang importance ng culture, kung ano ang culture, kung ano ang ah, culture in an international business, and then in sa body site ka mo sang mga siguro good side and then bad side, and then sa conclusion dira mambal ka makonclude ka na this is very important because this when you understand the foreign country's culture, you will be successful in terms of implementing marketing or in such. So mga amo na ang pwede nyo maano, ma-enumerate dira sa conclusion. So I hope na um, naintindihan lang ang lesson. So dire ang culture is very kumbaga medyo lawig siya na discussion, pero ah, ang bottom line ng Gideria is um, have the heart to understand each and every cultural differences na ma-encounter nyo in the future. So, you need to very accepting and have the open arms to accept your differences and their differences. So, I think that will be all for this discussion. So I hope that you have learned from it. So it's the end of the discussion. So I hope na this video will be very beneficial, very uh, in understanding ang business cultural differences in especially in doing international business. So I hope nga ang usually nga hindi maka-attend sa Google Meet will have an access to this video. So I hope nga you will learn from it even though nga ga-watch lang kamo sakon while I am explaining the key concept. So thank you everyone for listening. So I hope na may na-learn man kamo and kag may mabalon man kamo nga new ideas from this discussion. So have a nice day and thank you. Bye.